I've been working my way through all of Marco Pierre White's potato recipes from his BBC Maestro cookery course. Now I want to tell you how I found them, whether they're worth doing, and exactly which ones you should try. I've made Pommes fondant, boiled potatoes with butter, Pommes maxim, rosti, gratin dauphinoise, buttered chip shop chips, Marco's special tortilla. And to finish them off, I now need to do Pommes boulangere, so join me as I make that one, and then I'll tell you all about all those other potato recipes that I've tried. Potatoes boulangere is a very simple dish of baked potato and onion, said to be named after the French bakers, where townspeople would take their boulangere to be baked and using the residual heat of the baker's oven. We need to shred these onions, and then I'm going to fry them gently in a little butter until starting to caramelise. I'm not going to get into the whole how long does it take to caramelise onions debate. I'm just going to follow Marco's recipe. He appears to cook them not really caramelised, but broken down and starting to stew, so I would say quite well softened. And while my onions cook, I'm just going to peel some waxy potatoes. I'm not entirely sure. I've made boulangere with waxy potatoes before. I usually use floury. So I'm interested to see what difference that makes in the final dish. And now they're all peeled, over to the machine to slice them finely. I've created perfectly thin, beautiful pieces. Nice, consistent coins of potato. Marco doesn't want them washed. He still wants some of that starchy glue in place. I'm just going to leave them on a towel just to dry out the surface. Now I've taken my onions as far as I want them to go. Lightly browned, but quite soft. And I'm going to use some stock. Marco is pretty agnostic about what stock you use. However, it is of course an all stock pot. A little stock to start us off, just to cover the base of the pan. And then in with the potatoes, like fish scales, he says. Add some onions now. And then just a little stock. A little drizzle of clarified butter. And now our potatoes. Boulangere, of course, traditionally served with lamb, quite often in fact. Cooked with the lamb above it, so all the lamb stock that's created drips into the potatoes, compacting that down. So more seasoning, a little more butter, and a little more stock. Now I'm just going to wrap that and bake that in an oven that's 120 degrees C for about 80 minutes. So let's look at the rest of Marco's potato repertoire. Pommes fondant. Now, this was one that really got me started into the world of Marco and trying to understand how he does recipes. It's essentially potatoes simmered in butter for quite a long time. Other recipes will have you bake it in the oven. This all takes place on the stove top. You simmer the potatoes after carefully peeling them and shaping them and then poaching them in that butter. It is excessive. But this is where I first bumped into him not being able to explain quantities and ratios particularly well. It doesn't allow for different size pans. It doesn't really explain those things particularly well. It's not a good recipe, it's not very well written. I'm sure it's very tasty, but you can find lots of examples of it better elsewhere. Boiled potatoes with butter. Now, this is starting to follow a theme. You cook new potatoes as usual, just simmer them in lots of water. But then just before they're finished cooking, you add a whole chunk of butter and then finish the simmering in that. Cover them over and then leave them to sit so that they absorb the butter. So with salt and eat, they are delicious, but then you're eating solid butter, so why wouldn't it be? Very nice, but it does feel a bit over the top for home dining. Pommes maxim. I did this one on a recent live stream. This is very thinly sliced potatoes. Dried out. And then pan fried and layered with lots of, again, clarified butter and salt. You flip, so you cook both sides, and if I'm honest, I slightly caught this one and it burnt slightly on one side. I know that for next time. I have made Pommes maxim, also known as Pommes Anna, before, and it's very tasty. It's layers of potato that have gone a bit crispy. It's really nice. Marco's gratin dauphinoise. I compared this one in a previous video to my own recipe for potato dauphinoise, and I'll be honest, I prefer my method. It's a standard technique of, again, layering potatoes in cream and baking. I prefer to simmer them on the hob first in the cream, with plenty of garlic, plenty of black pepper and salt. That means you can get the seasoning right, and then transfer to the oven, and they come out much more consistently, in my opinion. I prefer my recipe. Buttered chip shop chips. We make chips as usual, cut potatoes. Fry them at 140 degrees for about 8 minutes. Turn up the oil to 180 degrees and fry again for the final crispy. And if I'm honest, this was nowhere near crisp enough for me. But then he adds butter to make sure they're not too crispy. This can be the way you get chips from a chip shop, that is a fish and chip shop in the UK. So this is what he was aiming for. So he got exactly what he wanted, but it's not quite the taste for me. I prefer a little crisp and snap on my chips. Potato rosti. So again, using my machine, I can shred everything to the same size. And then pack it into a pan. Having learnt my lesson with the Pommes maxim, I let the heat go much more gently. Allow it to colour on one side. Flip it all over. Again, plenty of butter, plenty of seasoning. Cook on the other side and then serve. This takes about 20 to 25 minutes. It's a good one. Marco's special tortilla. This is another one I did on a live stream, and it's a bit more involved and convoluted than other tortilla recipes you might have seen. In this one, we deep fry the onions and deep fry the potatoes first, adding them to quite a lot of eggs. I halved Marco's recipe and used a dozen here. You fry it in the pan on top of the hob, and flip and finish cooking. And then as a final flourish, cook some eggs, bake them into a sheet, because what this recipe needs is more eggs. When they've set on the bottom, transfer them to a grill just to finish cooking the tops. Slide onto your potato cake, and then of course you grate over black truffle. This was actually super rich, super indulgent, and a lot of fun actually, and will be a good showpiece, but not something you could eat every day. It's incredibly rich just with the butter and eggs alone, and then you're adding black truffle to it. The boulangere has had about 1 hour and 20 in the oven with about 15 minutes without the top on, and I've just left it with the foil covering it just for 20 minutes or so, as Marco says, so it becomes intoxicated in the stock. You get all those layers, there's a waft of butter immediately. Soft, but still firm. The onions are a real powerhouse in there, absolutely cutting through with their sweet sharpness. Very tasty, and I'll be honest, probably the best method for boulangere I've tried. So looking back at all these potato recipes, what have we learned? That essentially take a potato, add butter, salt, and then leave it to rest before serving, and you'll be on to a winner. There are no end of potato recipes, and these are just the classics that Marco has served up for us. It's always fascinating digging into Marco's methods and techniques, and always very interesting, and I come away learning something each time. Not each one is absolutely perfect for me, but I learn a little bit more every time I cook one. What's your favourite way of cooking potatoes? Let me know in the comments down below. I hope you enjoyed that, and I'll catch you next time.